To concentrate the mind, one must observe a life of celibacy and not fall down. One must undergo the austerity of voluntarily giving up sense enjoyment. One must then control the mind and senses, give charity, be truthful, clean and non-violent, follow the regulated principles, and regularly chant the holy name of the Lord. Thus, a sober and faithful person who knows the religious principles is temporarily purified of all sins performed with his body, words, and mind. These sins are like the dried leaves of creepers beneath a bamboo tree, which may be burned by fire, although their roots remain to grow again at the first opportunity. Purport. Tapaha is explained in the Smriti Shastra as follows. Manasas chendriyanang cha aikagryam paramang tapaha. Complete control of the mind and senses and their complete concentration on one kind of activity is called tapaha. Our Krishna consciousness movement is teaching people how to concentrate the mind on devotional service. This is first class tapaha. Brahmacarya, the life of celibacy, has 8 aspects. One should not think of women, speak about sex life, dally with women, look lustfully at women, talk intimately with women, or decide to engage in sexual intercourse, nor should one endeavor for sex life or engage in sex life. One should not even think of women or look at them, to say nothing of talking with them. This is called first-class brahmacharya. If a brahmachari or sannyasi talks with a woman in a secluded place, naturally there will be a possibility of sex life without anyone's knowledge. Therefore, a complete brahmachari practices just the opposite. If one is a perfect brahmachari, he can very easily control the mind and senses, give charity, speak truthfully, and so forth. To begin, however, one must control the tongue and the process of eating. In the Bhakti Marga, the path of devotional service, one must strictly follow the regulated principles by first controlling the tongue. Sivun mukhehi jihvado swayameva spuratyadaha. The tongue, jiva, can be controlled if one chants the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, does not speak of any subjects other than those concerning Krishna, and does not taste anything not offered to Krishna. If one can control the tongue in this way, brahmacharya and other purifying processes will automatically follow. It will be explained in the next verse that the path of devotional service is completely perfect and is therefore superior to the path of fruitive activities and the path of knowledge. Quoting from the Vedas, Srila Viraraghava Acharya explains that austerity involves observing fasts as fully as possible. Tapasana shakena. Srila Rupa Goswami has also advised that atyahara, too much eating, is an impediment to advancement in spiritual life. Also in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Yuktahara viharasya, yukta cheshtasya karmasu, yukta swapnava bodhasya, yogo bhavati dukhaha. He who is temperate in his habits of eating, sleeping, working, and recreation can mitigate all material pains by practicing the yoga system. In text 14, the word dhiraha, meaning those who are undisturbed under all circumstances, is very significant. Krishna tells Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, Matra sparshas kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukadaha agama payino nityas tangs titikshashva bharata. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O scion of Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. In material life, there are many disturbances, adhyatmika, adhidaivika, and adhibautika. One who has learned to tolerate these disturbances under all circumstances is called Dhira. Om Jnanatirmirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurimilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Shreshtham Manum Api Shachi Putram Atra Swarupa Rupam Tasyagrajam Urupurim Maturim Goshtavartim Radha Kundam Girivaramaho Radhika Madhavasham Prapto Yasya Pratita Kripaya Shri Gurum Tamnatasmi Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Atah Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrayatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parjana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Guru Vaishnava Bhagavan Tine Smarane Hoy Bigna Vinashan Anayashe Hoy Nijavan Chita Pura. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I received a request to give a talk on the 8 aspects of Brahmacarya. So I'm doing that here. Now, a good place to do it, as we have a small group of devotees here, men and women, who are engaged in devotional service with enthusiasm, determination, patience, utsaha nisyadharya tattadka, following all the rules, keeping themselves distinctly separate from the common people, and practicing spiritual life honestly, straightforwardly. So it's a good place to speak, where the principles of Krishna consciousness are being followed seriously. That is the essence, we can say, of Brahmacharya life, which is not necessarily only in the Brahmacharya ashram. These principles here, given in this verse, are for everyone who's serious about advancing spiritual life. These principles are outlined or mentioned in relation to the path of knowledge, but they're also applicable in the path of Bhakti Yoga. Srila Prabhupada quite often quoted these first 2 lines, especially Tapasa Brahmacharya Shamena Cha Damena Cha. He often quoted and explained that. And I also wrote a book, Brahmacharya and Krishna Consciousness, in which I attempted to explain these topics in quite some detail. So often when I'm asked to speak on these topics, I say, just see the book. Pretty much what I had to say is in the book. If I was to, I might revisit it and add some things at some point. Let's see. But still, it's good to discuss these topics from time to time, as Srila Prabhupada did. Of course, in this purport, the 8 aspects of Brahmacharya are mentioned, and so many other topics are mentioned in this verse, but this is the only place in Srila Prabhupada's books where these 8 aspects of Brahmacharya are mentioned. Srila Prabhupada in talks, in 2 talks, both given in 1967, discussed these 8 aspects and also gave the Sanskrit. So this is from a talk that he gave on January the 4th, 1967. Oh, okay, that's good, yeah, thank you. Let's move this to one side and this to the other side. Yeah, I want to keep that also. So this is 1967, Srila Prabhupada's preaching in the West. He's got a foothold, we can say, it's in New York. And he's really, at this point, teaching the devotees to be devotees, to graduate from their hippie life. They're devotees, but they need a lot of training, a lot of instruction. So Srila Prabhupada is quoting in this talk, it's a talk on Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, text 4, from Bhavartha Deepika. Who knows what Bhavartha Deepika is? Anyone? Commentary, yeah? Anyone like to say? No? Commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam by Sridhar Swami. Thank you very much. So Srila Prabhupada is reading out the Sanskrit and summarizing. This is from, this same section of Bhagavatam that we're reading. Tatu nityam apramatah shanaya labate nanya iti sadrashtantam aha neti patyam evanam ashnataha purushan yata vyadhayo nabadhante tata niyamadi kartak shemaya tatvagyanaya samartho bhavati. Srila Prabhupada summarizes all of this by saying, therefore, following the regulative principles, anyone who is following, he becomes able for progress in spiritual marga, in the spiritual path. So these things are needed for advancement in the spiritual path. We hear often, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Eva Kevalam. It doesn't mean that we can break the four regulated principles and chant Hare Krishna and still make positive spiritual advancement. Hare Nama Eva Kevalam means the path of chanting Hare Krishna. This is discussed in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains that 3 times, nastyeva, 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 3 times it is stated, no other, means not by karma, not by jnana, not by yoga, only by bhakti, which by harinam and kali yoga. So it doesn't mean that we avoid all regulated principles. That's a misunderstanding. Then Srila Prabhupada goes on from Bhavartha Deepika, Etad eva vishadeyati dvabhyam tapasa. Tapasa means Ekadashi, tapasya. Interestingly, Srila Prabhupada, he was in New York, and in the beginning, before anyone was initiated or anything, he would have people coming, he would give them prasadam, engage them in chanting. He didn't give many rules, but Ekadashi, that was from the very beginning. Ekadashi, that one should not take grains or beans. Tapasa means Ekadashi, tapasya. Tapasa, austerity, means that one should be determined. In this life I must complete Krishna consciousness. That is tapasa, and for this purpose, whatever I have to do, I must do. So we can see this is a long way from just chant Hare Krishna and be happy. In the beginning, come along, just come, chant, eat. But Prabhupada's really giving the essence now of what it means. So this is suitable for devotees who really want to be serious. And Prabhupada is saying that everyone should be serious. Manasas chendriyanam cha aikagryang paramam tapaha iti smritehe. Srila Prabhupada comments, aikagryam. Anyone know what that means? They have the word, almost the same in Bhagavad Gita. It means focus, literally means focus. Aikagra means the first class tapasa duty is to fix up the senses and the mind in devotional service. That is first class. My mind is trying to enjoy something, but I'll not allow the mind to enjoy that thing. I must engage my mind in Krishna. Manasas chendriyanam. And if you can fix up your mind in Krishna's service, then all the senses, our hands, legs, eyes, ears, they will also remember it. But if you cannot control your mind, then the other senses will not be possible. Paramam, so therefore try to control the mind, that is first class austerity. Continuing from Bhagavata Deepika, Manasas Chendriyanam cha aikagryam paramang tapaha iti smritehe, repeating that. Brahmacharyein ashtangena tad uktam smaranam kirtanam. Brahmacharya. Brahmacharya means controlling the sex life. That is called brahmachari. One brahmachari, he is completely celibate life, that is brahmacharya. Another brahmacharya, the first principle, or the generally understood principle, Srila Prabhupada says, is celibate life. Another aspect of brahmacharya, now I see what. Another brahmachari, or the secondary brahmachari, is to remain satisfied with one opposite sex, not varieties. Today I have sex life with this boy or girl, again next day another, again another. That's was very common, Srila Prabhupada found in the Western world at that time, especially among the young people, and at this time also. And that is not brahmachari. But if one sticks to one, therefore marriage is recommended. That is brahmachari. That is also brahmachari. So in the Shastras, and then Srila Prabhupada quotes, again from Bhagavata Deepika, and these are the 8 aspects in Sanskrit. Smaranam, kirtanam, keli, prekshanam, guhya, bhashanam, sankalpo, dhyavasayas, kriya, nivritir, evacha. Etan, maitunam, ashtangam, pravadanti manishinaha. Viparitang, brahmacharyam, etad, evashta lakshanam, iti shamo manaso niyamanam, damo bahyendriyanam, tyago danam, yamo hingsadi, niyamo japadihi. So we may wonder why Srila Prabhupada glossed here yama. The words here are yama and niyama. So the 5 yamas, prohibitions, and 5 niyamas. They're understood a little differently in different schools, but that's famously in the Yoga Shastra, Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. So don't steal, don't lie, this. Srila Prabhupada has given yamena by avoiding cursing and violence, and niyamena by regularly chanting the holy name of the Lord. So how is that? He's taking it from Sridhar Swami. Yamo hingsadihi. The yama here, the prohibitions, means no violence, and niyama japadi, chanting the holy names. So he's taking it from that. So Srila Prabhupada goes on. So the tapasya life begins from celibacy, brahmacharya. Shukadev Goswami recommends. Brahmacharya is described in the Shastras that smaranam, kirtanam, keli, prekshanam, guhya bhashanam. Sex life, smaranam, thinking of sex life, that is against brahmacharya. Complete celibacy means one should not think of even sex life. Smaranam, or talk of sex life. That's, Kirtanam, smaranam, kirtanam. These words are given. So smaranam, we know that word very well, because that's what we're supposed to do, right? That's what we're aiming at. And kirtan, we know very well. We're supposed to glorify Krishna. But here, in the discussion of brahmacharya, smaran and kirtan, these are 2 things which are forbidden. But remembering women, that means deliberately holding in the mind. Or kirtana. Here Srila Prabhupada glosses is talking about. It may not be glorifying, but just talking about. Smaranam, kirtanam, keli, preksha. Our modern literature, Srila Prabhupada says, newspaper and everything, simply full with talks of sex life. But this is against brahmacharya life. Smaranam, kirtanam, Keli, and actually indulging in sex life. Keli means playing, so it's like flirting, we can say. Prekshanam, looking, overlooking a nice boy or nice girl. So it works both ways. Generally the Shastras are mostly, especially those aiming at directly aiming at self-realization. That's on the Jnana Marga, the Yoga Marga, Bhakti Marga. They're mostly written for males, living beings in male human bodies. But it works both ways. Prekshanam, looking at nice, good. No, that's also against Brahmacharya, Srila Prabhupada says. It can be very difficult. How are we going to stop? Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, we find in one comment right here in this Bhagavatam 6th canto. How will we stop seeing women? What should we do? Go to the forest. Or you want to be more extreme, you can work out how to do yoga and hold your breath practically unlimitedly and go underwater. Right? How about that? Well, it won't necessarily work, because Sobari Muni, to get away from everyone and everything, went underwater, but then he saw the fish engaging in sex life, and he started thinking, well, looks pretty good, maybe I should try it out. So the mind is with us, but Vishnu Chakravarti says we can't avoid seeing women. It's not, we shouldn't deliberately, what's the word? There's a word in English, ogling. There must be some word in Croatian also. Ogling means looking lustfully and shamelessly. So one should not do that, but one cannot avoid. So Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur says that how one can avoid being attracted. And he gives the example that just like on a fast day, one makes a resolve to not eat. And then if you see food on a fast day, then it should be that you don't feel attraction to it. Because you say, anyway, I'm fasting, so I can't enjoy it. If you have the idea that I'm not going to enjoy it, sankalpa, then one's not attracted to it. Just like the vow to take only prasadam. So you may walk past the ice cream shop, but no attraction. Or some chocolates or the Cadbury's chocolate, whatever, but no attraction, because we already decided we're not going to eat it. So it's a very good system for cutting it out. So you decide we're not going to engage in sex life, and we see women and we're not attracted. That's the formula given by Vishnu Chakravarti. Guhyam bhashanam, whispering between girls and boys. That is also against brahmacharya. It means guhyam bhashanam, talking in private, literally means talking secretly. Sankalpam means, just as I was using that word, sankalpa, the determination not to engage in sex life, protects us. But then, sankalpa, one can decide, okay, I'm going to engage in sex life. So this is against the principle of brahmacharya. That's one of the 8 aspects. Vyavasaya, making endeavors to engage in sex life. Endeavoring how to affect. So when we can stop all these activities, that is real brahmacharya. What do you all think about that? What does Srila Prabhupada say next? It is very difficult at the present age. Doesn't mean we should give up, but Srila Prabhupada makes that comment. In the Ajamil section of Bhagavatam, which we're just beginning here. We haven't quite come to it yet. Then it's described how Ajamil's mind became disturbed by seeing a low-class man shamelessly indulging in sexual proclivities with a low-class woman, and his mind became agitated. But Srila Prabhupada said, well, you see it on the street. It's just everywhere in the modern age, so it's very difficult. Etad maitanyam ashtangam pravadanti maneshinaha vikarita brahmacharyam etad ashtanam lakshanamiti. Brahmacharya means that you cannot think of sex life, you cannot talk of sex life, you cannot whisper about sex life, or you cannot endeavor for sex life. These 8 types of activities in sex indulgence are against brahmacharya life. But here it is prescribed that if you want to make a solution to the problems of life, then you have to adopt a life of tapasya, austerity, which begins from brahmacharya. To summarize the brahmacharya life in this age, we have given a simple formula. No illicit sex. That's it. That covers everything. Sex is there. Sex is not bad. In the Bhagavad Gita it is said, dharma viruddha kamosmi. Sex life which is not against the religious principles of life, that I am, Krishna says. So dharma viruddha, according to Vedic civilization, one should have sex indulgence only once in a month. That is the prescription. And when the wife is pregnant, there is no sex life. That is dharma viruddha. That is not against the religious principles. Even in your married life, if you indulge sex life more than once in a month, or in pregnancy, that is against religious principles. Oh, that's early 1967. Where are we going here? Whoops. January 4th, 1967. Oh, no, I merged the 2 talks. Yeah, I was reading from Srila Prabhupada. He gave January 1971 and July 1971. So I read from both of those quotes. We can turn it round the other way. One should think of women. All brahmacharis should think of women, speak about sex life. Highest level, think about the gopis, talk about the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. That even we're warned against, not to jump in foolishly, because it is sex. Sex is the highest principle. Love, adi rasa, it's love. In this material world, sex and love, people can't work out the difference. There is no difference in the spiritual world. In this world there is lust. And because lust seems, or love in this world is intertwined, love between male and female in this world is intertwined with lust. So we are enjoined to be careful in hearing about the pastimes of Krishna with the gopis, with the queens, because to us it might seem like lust, or it might awaken our deep-rooted lusty desires in our heart. If we hear Shraddhanvita, with great faith, the same word is given in this verse that we read today. If we hear with great faith about Krishna's pastimes with the gopis, that can clear the disease of lust from the heart. In this regard, Srila Prabhupada warned that be careful. He quoted this and he warned, be careful. If you feel that you're becoming materially agitated, then stop it. So it is the formula given by Shukadev Goswami. But we have to check our own mind and see if we're becoming disturbed. As Srila Prabhupada stated here, it's very different, very difficult in the present age. It's still, to some extent, understood that monks, here in the Western world. If we say someone is a monk, it's not expected that they will be living with women or having girlfriends or any such thing. Illicit sex is very much part of the way of life in the Western world. It was in 1965 when Srila Prabhupada went there. That was in 1966. He was in New York, and it's very much part of the Western world. Maybe this was Yugoslavia at that time. Maybe it wasn't so prominent here. I don't know, but it was very gross. Well, especially among those the hippie class, beginning in the 1960s in America. And that wasn't much appreciated by the mainstream, but gradually the mainstream died out and the hippies became the mainstream. So it's quite normal and accepted now. Previously, there could be no question of the President of the United States being a divorcee who's remarried, but that no one even makes an issue, and probably most people don't even know about it because it's so normal. In the last century, in the 1930s, I believe it was, one king of England had to abdicate, had to give up his post as the king because he married a divorcee. But now the present king of England is married to a divorcee, and no one thinks anything of it. It's just okay. It's just, well, that's the way people live. But for a monk or someone who's taken that vow, religious vow, that's not considered at all good. In India, we see that it's still sannyasis, and they're highly respected, generally speaking, among Hindus, at least. But if it's found out that if a sannyasi is having illicit sexual relationships secretly, then he becomes totally despised, very much. If anyone else is having illicit sexual relations, that's not considered good. But for someone who's being respected like that and who's supposed to be a spiritual leader, that's considered very, very bad. So this orange cloth, or saffron cloth, should be worn with great care. Here in the Western countries, people don't know, they don't care so much. But in India, if before a devotee is allowed to wear saffron cloth, they have to be in the ashram for quite some time. It has to be seen their behavior is ideal, and it's generally understood that they shouldn't marry after that. Although some do. It's not the same as taking sannyas, literally. And for those who are not within ISKCON, who don't know that you can be I'm talking about in India now, who don't know that we have the system that brahmacharis also wear orange cloth, then the brahmacharis outside there they're treated the same ways as sannyasis. So it's a great responsibility to live up to that. And practically there are so many brahmacharis who have been spiritual leaders of spiritual organizations. Their names are famous within certain communities. Mahanambrata Brahmachari, Parnavananda Brahmachari. They didn't literally take sannyas, but they took the vow of brahmacharya, and it's considered the same thing. If you wear saffron, it's considered the same thing. It's different in our ISKCON. This life of celibacy, everyone should practice in Krishna consciousness. It's expected that those who live in the ashram as brahmacharis, they practice strictly. But it's for grihastas also, because no one can make spiritual advancement without that. And for women, their vow is to be attached to one man only, their husband. And of course, their father, their sons, but their relationship with their sons is via their husband. And when they're married, they leave one family and join another. So they still have their father, but their mooring, their social position and their psychological position is supposed to be as servant to their husband. And in that way, they get all the benefits of following Brahmacharya. And of course, one man, they're not looking here and there for different men. So they get, if their husband is following, especially if their husband is following very nicely and strictly, then it's just by serving they get the same benefit. Although we do find examples in the Vedic literature, even the husband is not following well, when the woman is very chastely serving him, she's also greatly benefited by doing so. Yeah, so it's difficult in the modern age, the whole atmosphere is different, people don't understand it. Rather they think that people are more inclined to think there's something wrong with it than right with it. And even people who in India, they're very respectful to brahmacharis and sannyasis, but they don't want their sons to become brahmacharis and sannyasis. I think that's the worst thing that could happen to them. There are some cases where they do want their sons to be brahmacharis, but mostly not. So you could say it's a lonely path, in as much as you can't mix freely with everyone. It's not only not mixing with women, but not mixing with worldly-minded people. But shouldn't be lonely. There should be a group of brahmacharis who can interact with each other. I was just listening to a recording of devotees speaking of his memories of brahmachari life in the 1970s, how books, they say, just absorbed in books, distributing and reading, that's all. They would read together, or they'd read on their own. One devotee, he was distributing books at Chicago O'Hare Airport. It was very good for distribution, but very tough also. But Atlanta Airport was considered the best. So he applied for a transfer. He said, yeah, okay, but if you want to go to Atlanta, we keep that for the very best, most dedicated. So you've got to do 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. Long hours, hard work, no pay. 7 days a week, 12 hours. That means they'd be out early to catch there's an early morning rush. They'd be out by 7 o'clock and they'd come back by 7 o'clock. We don't see that nowadays. Even one devotee was remembering that Srila Prabhupada came in the airport. They were distributing books there, so they greeted Prabhupada and all the devotees were there. They went off with Prabhupada to the temple and they just stayed at the airport and went on distributing books because they thought this is the way we serve Srila Prabhupada. They also said when Prabhupada left, they didn't feel that kind of ripping separation as so many other devotees did, because from the very beginning, their training was to serve Srila Prabhupada in separation by reading his books and distributing his books. So they just went on. They got the news and then they just went out on book distribution. That's what we do. So there are a few thoughts about that. There could be many questions about this. Often when I'm asked questions about brahmachari life, It's this, the answer's already there in that book. So any questions, comments, objections? Yeah, please.
Yeah, before a couple of days you give lecture, I think in Darwar, and you said that even we don't know how much we are deep in Maya. And
we don't know how deeply we're in Maya. Yeah, and we also don't know how much we're advancing in Krishna consciousness. How about that, to offset that? Because we are rising early every day, we're chanting, we're following to some level. So we also don't know how much, we don't know how far down we are, we don't know how far up we are.
Somehow I know that I'm deep in Maya, and...
you are deep in Maya, but...
because I cannot understand...
But you're going up. And you're going up, and you're getting the mercy of the Vaishnavas, Hari Guru and Vaishnavas.
But still I cannot understand one verse, what we wrote before a couple of days in Srimad Bhagavatam, the third canto. They explained that in Vaikuntha, it's grihastas coming together in a ship, I say.
Yeah, the grihastas, they ride in an airplane.
And they are not interesting for some...
and they're enjoying each other.
And the next verse said, even when something like this, when a woman looking herself in water, and it's not much more beauty when was kissing from a husband, actually from Krishna. And maybe if we can...
It sounds like, it sounds almost like mundane sexual overtone in Vaikuntha.
But he explained that actually all this, this is Lakshmi's, because these wives, it's actually
in Vaikuntha, yeah.
From Krishna. And I'm thinking, why they need a man?
Why do you need a man?
Can you imagine that you...
Well, why do you need a man if you're just serving Krishna? Why do the women need a man?
This man kissing
well, that's Krishna's arrangement, that there is man and woman. It begins with him and Radha. And it goes in the spiritual world also. There's manly psyche and womanly psyche, but it's centered on Krishna. Why are they kissing? Exchange of affection. That's what I was saying in the talk I just gave now. It's difficult for us to understand because our consciousness is so deep in Maya. We see it in terms of mundane enjoyment. Srila Prabhupada writes, there's no sex life in Vaikuntha. I believe that's in Madhva Vijay, the life of Madhvacharya. There's something to the effect that there is. But I won't get into that. If it is, it's exchange of affection. It's not exploitation. It's hard for us to understand. And then above Vaikuntha is Vrindavan, Golok Vrindavan. There are also husbands and wives. And we may say the gopis, they're husbands, they're like shadows. But there's Nanda and Yashoda, the older cowherd men and women. So that's there.
My question is, can book distribution be too exclusive in certain circumstances where there are not many devotees? For example,
can book distribution be too exclusive in some circumstances where not many devotees?
For example, if you have three...
Well, there are only 3 devotees. We're just like on a traveling sanctum, there are 3 devotees. And everyone says, I'm only going to do book distribution. And then no one's going to do shopping for boga, no one's going to prepare any meal. Then it becomes impractical, doesn't it? So, do the needful is also a motto. Then you were going to ask something.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the lecture. In the verse, it's mentioned the principle of non-violence. And recently I stumbled upon a quote from Bhakti Saraswati Thakur, in which he says that misplaced display of humility is an act of violence towards other living beings.
Bhakti Saraswati Thakur said that misplaced humility is an act of violence toward other living beings.
Yes, and could you please shed some light?
Shed some light on it. Well, anything which doesn't benefit others or help them to come to Krishna consciousness is an act of violence. At least in a, what can we say, passive violence. That there are crimes of, what is that? There's crimes of commission and crimes of, what's the other word? Omission, yeah. So it can be a crime if we do something wrong, and it can also be a crime if we fail to do something which we should do. Especially misplaced humility, when someone makes a show of being humble but they're actually not, then it confuses the whole issue about what humility is. And my own experience in Bengal is that it's because the descriptions are there of humility in Vaishnavism, then we see that to even make a show of humility is considered Vaishnavism. So actual humility is lost under the show. And people think that, just like for instance, I still remember when I was quite new in Bangladesh going to a Nam Yagya, which means professional groups are called to chant Hare Krishna. It started in ISKCON now also. People are called and all their expenses are paid and they're given some money. So seeing one man putting chandan, sandalwood on the other man's head, and then they embrace, and then they both collapse on the ground in ecstasy. But it's not ecstasy, because they're both fish eaters. So where is the ecstasy? Doing your gig, and when it's over, you go off, and the first thing, smoke a bidi. Because it's a 2-hour gig, and you couldn't smoke for 2 hours. So this show, and in the gig, it's big show of bhav, and then when their 2 hours is over and the next group's not ready, then they look angry because they have to go on chanting because you can't stop. And then they stop all the show and they're just standing there, just doing it as a formality because they have to keep the non-stop kirtan going. So this is a kind of violence because it misrepresents what actual Vaishnavism is. Any questions from the ladies? Which kind of lady are you? Gopi in Vrindavan. If anyone, especially in a male body, tells me I am a gopi, I become doubtful. One of the most lionized devotees in our movement, who's passed away now, who's openly said, actually I'm a gopi. Yeah, then?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah?
One talk of Mahotsaha Prabhu, I heard that you did observation in our society because the devotees they're taking this karmic grace prepared for karmics, that's our society in such situation, like standards going down.
Standards going down because people are supposed to be devotees are eating food, especially grains cooked by non-devotees. Yeah, well, that's what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said. Bishoyer onna kaile molin hoimon. The mind becomes contaminated if we eat food of sense enjoyers. So Krishna consciousness is a science. Our mind will become contaminated if we eat food cooked or even given, and that used to be the culture, by materialistic sense enjoyers. So Hare Krishna, we'll finish there for now. All glories to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada.